Hey there, Amanda from the Happy Homestead. Today I'm going to make applesauce and show you how to can it. Now I recently just got a bushel, 36 pounds of organic apples from Azure Standard. Check this link above if you hadn't seen that video. But I wanted to preserve the apples as best as I can that works for our family. And so we use applesauce a lot within cooking and baking and also making some of our own pork breakfast sausage. So I want to use these apples up. We're saving some for fresh eating, but honestly making applesauce, homemade applesauce, is one of the easiest things you can do. And you don't have to can it if you prefer not to. You can always just jar it up, put it in the refrigerator, let it cool down, and then put it in the freezer and keep it in the freezer as well. I'm gonna can it. I think this is a really good, easy beginner canning product for you to make if you're new to canning. So I'll show you that, but you really want to start with getting the apples in a slow cooker. You could use an Instant Pot. I actually prefer to do the slow cooker because it allows some of that water to evaporate and it creates a much darker, caramelized, thicker applesauce. And you can just leave it overnight and do it in the morning, or set it up in the morning and then do it at night. There's no set time on how it needs to cook. I just put it on low for a minimum of 8 to 10 hours, but I can leave it up to 12 to 16 hours and then just can it up. So let's get started. We're gonna get our apples cut and put them in the slow cooker. So you wanna make sure you're starting with clean apples. I do not bother skinning them. It's not necessary. I leave the skins on, it adds extra fiber. I'm just basically cutting them up, taking that core out, and throwing them in the crock pot. Again, it's one of the easiest things to do. So I'm gonna fill the crock pot up. I may or may not use all these apples, I don't know yet. But I'm gonna fill it up. I'm gonna add about a 1/4 cup of water. I'm gonna add some lemon juice for some acidity. You don't have to add lemon juice. Now I follow the recipes from Ball Canning, as well as for the National Center of Home Food Preservation. You want to make sure that if you're ever doing any canning, that you are not just finding a random recipe on Pinterest or on the internet, right? You need to make sure that you are following a safe, approved canning recipe. And so sticking with recipes from Ball, which is freshpreserving.com, or from the National Center of Home Food Preservation, you know you'll be good. Because it's all about, when it's about steam canning or water bath canning, it's all about acidity. Apples are pretty acidic to begin with. That's why they get to be water bath canned, and it's not necessary to add the lemon juice. I do it just for a little extra flavor and also for that protection with the acidity. That's just my preference. You can see as I'm talking, this is almost half full already. It takes no time at all. Okay, so you can see how fast that was, right? That did not take hardly any time to get those apples cut and in the crock pot. So I have them on low. I've got the crock pot plugged in and I'm just gonna leave it on low. I'm gonna add a 1/4 cup of water. And the reason we do that is just so that nothing burns on the bottom. There'll be plenty of liquids that release through the bottom with the cooking of the apples, but you just don't want anything to burn. And like I said, I'm just gonna add a little lemon juice. It's my own preference for flavor, probably about 1/8 of a cup, as well as just for the little added extra acidity. All that's left is put the top on. That's it. Leave it overnight, leave it 8 to 12 hours. Really, it's up to you is when you can get to it. I just wouldn't leave it more than maybe 14 to 16 hours. As long as it's on low, it'll be okay, but you don't ever want it to get, if you get it too thick, it'll be apple butter, which isn't a bad thing either. It's upon your preference. But we'll come back and check on this tomorrow. Okay, so it is the next morning. The apples are in the crock pot. I turned the crock pot off or unplugged it, but they're still very hot. And I'm gonna show that to you in just a minute. So I'm trying to think how far they went. It was probably 15 hours. Again, you don't have to get exact. It's really up to your preference as far as how long you wanna cook them and the consistency that you want your applesauce. But the first thing I'm going to do is get my stove ready with my canner. So I am going to be using a steam canner today. And remember I said yesterday that this is going to be one of the easiest beginner canning recipes you can do. The crock pot helps with cooking the apples and really not having to do anything, right? That makes it so simple. The steam canner is a game changer. It has revolutionized, I don't use that word lightly, it has revolutionized water bath canning for me. Because traditionally water bath canning, which is for high acid foods, is like usually like a big stock pot full of water. You gotta get it boiling. The jars have to be covered by I think like a couple of inches. It's a lot of water, it's a lot of heat, it's a lot of time. The steam canner, I got this steam canner probably 3 years ago. It came out probably within the last 5 years or so. And I very rarely use traditional water bath canning anymore. I only do it if I have a large batch of items to do. But otherwise, this also just makes things so much easier because you can do smaller batches and not be in the kitchen all day. Like you're literally gonna see how much time, you saw how much time it took to do the apples, and you're gonna see that this takes no time at all. So the first thing I'm gonna do is turn the stove on. I already filled this with water. Now in the steam canner, there is this rack, right? Because you never want your hot jars on the bottom of a hot pan. So I have about 1.5 inches, maybe 2 inches of water. I have the water coming right up to the rack. So it doesn't take much water at all. So imagine it doesn't take much heat to heat that water. So I'm just gonna turn that on to like a medium high just to get everything warm. And I'm gonna put my jars in with it. These are clean, just double checking they're clean pint jars. Right, so they don't have to be fully sterilized, they just need to be really clean. I'm gonna put them in, and I've also got my lids. Now, I'm doing standard mouth. I try to reserve my wide mouth jars for things that, I don't know, like larger items. Things that maybe I need to get my hand in, like crushed tomatoes to crush in the jar. Applesauce can do the standard mouth just fine. So I've got my lids. I need to open a new box here. And I just put the lids in there with it to heat up and soften up a little bit, soften the wax. I got 6 jars. I don't know that I have enough applesauce for 6. The steam canner, I think it holds a max of 7. So again, it's great for the smaller batches. All right, so I'm just gonna leave that to warm up, get everything nice and warm. Because you never want to have a really drastic temperature change, right? If you have a cold filling, a cold applesauce, a hot jar, and hot water, you're really like, you know, those kinds of drastic temperature changes, you're really risking the chance of your glass breaking, your jars breaking and having a huge mess. And that has happened to me. It's probably happened to just about every canner out there. It's a lesson you learn. I had it happen with crushed tomatoes and it was a mess. So make sure that you have things similar temperature wise. Okay, so here are our apples. Oh, they have cooked down really, really well. Let's see if you can see that there. I mean, look at that. Oh my gosh, it's almost like a third of the crock pot. They may have cooked a little much, but think of how rich that flavor is gonna be. So I'm just gonna blend these up, and I'm gonna use an immersion blender here. It just makes life easier. Smells amazing. Can you see the color? Look at that deep color. It is gorgeous. I just don't think you can get that color with an Instapot. I could be wrong, but this is beautiful. Just always be careful with an immersion blender to not have the hot food come up at your head, face. It is so thick. It is gorgeous. All right, I think that's probably pretty good. Yep, that is good. It's almost apple butter, almost. All right, so we're ready to start jarring everything up. The jars are warm. I'm gonna go grab those. I don't think I'm gonna have a whole lot. Probably maybe 4 jars worth. All right, so we're just gonna start ladling it in. I mean, look at how beautiful that color is. Now, again, if you do not want to can your applesauce, that is okay, right? You would still follow this process. You just wouldn't heat your jars up. But you would still do what I'm doing here as far as ladling into your jars, your clean jars. And then you would just put them in the fridge. It wouldn't really matter what kind of lid or even really what jars you use, as long as you're using freezer safe jars. Oh my gosh, we're not gonna have much at all. Yep, I think I might get a half pint. Okay, so I got a half pint here. Yeah, so you still need to use freezer safe jars, right? But put them in the fridge and cool them off before you put them in your freezer. And a new spatula. I mean, this is so thick. It's so pretty. So this applesauce, because it is so thick, I will probably use this specifically for our breakfast sausage. And so you're filling, if you are canning, you're filling, I think it's with a 1/2 inch head space. Again, I'll put the recipe from the National Center for Home Food Preservation in the show notes. And you're water bathing for 15 minutes. I'm gonna have to disperse some more in here. Yep, 2.5 pints. I am good with that. All right, and what we're gonna do is get some of the air bubbles out. There's a couple of ways you can do it. There's these magnetic things on the end to pick up your lids when they are hot. And the other end, you just kind of wipe around and try and get some of those air bubbles, those air pockets. And the reason for that is to make sure that we are not leaving any nooks and crannies for the bacteria to hide and grow. This is the other way I do it. This is more fun for me. It's therapeutic. And so there's actually a bubble right there. And it's popped. So it helps. I like to do that because it helps get the bubbles up. And you'll start to see them pop on the surface, have them come up and pop. And then I just check around my edges, make sure I don't see anything blatantly large and big. Yeah. All right, we're good. So now I need to clean up the rims. Again, freezing, still do this. We're still doing all of the same steps if you are freezing. But this is very important if you're canning because you need your lid to have a good seal on your glass jars. Okay, so these are ready. Let me go get the lids. Only need 3. And my rings. And you're just tightening it finger tight. You do not need to go strongman competition here. Hand finger tight. There you go. And now we're just going to put these in our steam canner. Get these out of here. This is why you have the magnet. So again, the steam canner is so great because look at how the water is already heating up. It's getting hot. Small batch. Not a day in the kitchen. It's fantastic. Okay, so with the steam canner, you're trying to get it up to, it's almost like a pressure within the dome here. I'll show you how this looks, and you want to get your red dial gauge over to the very dark green, depending upon what zone you're in, what altitude you're in, and again, you'll see that screenshot there. And so I'm trying to get to the very dark green because I'm in zone 1. So I'm going to keep my heat on medium-high right now, and once I get up into that green area, I'll lower it to about medium, and I'll start my 15-minute timer. Okay, we are getting up to pressure. Can you see that? If you see the red gauge, I need to go, I'm in zone 1, so I need to go to that very dark green, right? Depending, there's zone 1, 2, and 3, and again, it depends on your altitude. And you can just Google your altitude with your address and see what zone you're in. If you're going to the dark green, the middle green, or the very light green. So I'm going to turn my heat just down to medium and start my timer. 15 minutes. Okay, so I'm going to turn the burner off. And all I'm going to do is lift this up carefully. You'll see a lot of steam come up. And I'm just going to leave the jars there for about 5 to 10 minutes. And again, it's all about the temperature and not creating too many big temperature shocks. But after 5 to 10 minutes, I will then take them out of the steam canner and put them on a towel to cool. It's been 10 minutes. I'm going to remove these from the canner and just place them on a towel here. You want to put them somewhere where they can really cool undisturbed. Now, this normally wouldn't be an undisturbed place, but it actually is for us today. because we aren't gonna be here. So I'm gonna leave these, and these have not popped yet, but the jars, the lids will start popping, and you can tell that they've sealed. Don't always expect to hear the pop. You won't always hear it, you won't always see it. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. So don't freak out if you don't hear it, and just leave them undisturbed. So they're there. I'm gonna leave them for a full 24 hours, and in 24 hours I'll test the lids just to make sure that they are sealed. They're pushed down. I can't remember if it's concave or convex. I'm really tired. But they're pushed down and they're sealed, and you'll know it, right? If you push on the lid and it has give, it didn't quite seal. So put it in the fridge and just use that one first. This is such an easy beginner canning recipe. I really hope that you'll try it. Making applesauce in itself is so easy. There's no real reason to buy it if you don't have to. And then to can it, if you're looking to get into canning, this is a really great way to do it. And honestly, the steam canner will help you branch into canning a lot easier as well, and better on your budget. Steam canners, you can find them online. They're usually less than $50, and it really is a great investment. So let me know if you have any questions. Happy canning, and stay healthy, stay well. See you next time.